The Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It was a proud day in November 2008 when ACT not only returned to Parliament with an increased number of 5 MPs, but for the first time we entered into a confidence and supply agreement with the National Party. That agreement changed the government, and if it hadn't been for the people of Epsom and those who gave their party vote to ACT, we may well still have a Labour government. Since then, ACT has played a vital role in supporting the National Party in all of the policy initiatives it campaigned for at the last election. However, we have held the government to account where we've needed to. To see this, one only has to look at the events of the last week with the Criminal Procedure and Modernisation Bill and the Video Surveillance Bill have passed with a significantly different form than the way that they were initially promoted by the ACT Party. For these reasons alone, the ACT Party not only deserves to, but must be represented in Parliament in even greater numbers. It was very pleasing then to see in the New Zealand Herald this morning the editorial that acknowledged the vital role that ACT had played in this Parliament. ACT, however, is perhaps better known as campaigning for a stronger economy and a more prosperous New Zealand. We believe that the income gap between New Zealand and Australia can be closed and that there is much that this government could do to achieve that. Sadly, National has lacked the courage to implement the recommendations of the 2025 Task Force, chaired by the now ACT leader Don Brash, and the results of that are seen in the ever-growing public debt, the double credit downgrade that we've experienced this week. National has been good at misrepresenting ACT's position as wanting to slash public spending. But the truth is that there has been a massive blowout in public spending over the last 4 years of the Labour government, and if the expenditure had been held just to 2005 levels as a percentage of GDP, New Zealand would have considerably less debt, our exporters would be more competitive, our current account more balanced, and our incomes higher. Despite this, ACT has achieved much in government. We forced labour market reform so that the 90-day trial period is now extended to all employers so that young and high-risk entrants have even greater employment opportunities. It remains a scandal, however, that the National Party was not prepared to reverse Labour's abolition of youth rates that they opposed so strongly in opposition. Both National and Labour have directly contributed to the unemployment of many thousands of young New Zealanders. And we think that's a disgrace, Mr Speaker, particularly when there are MPs in this House who should know better. We have also negotiated with National to open the ACC workplace account to competition, and we've established the Productivity Commission. ACT's Regulatory Standards Bill and the Spending Cap People's Veto Bill are now at Select Committee and will, if passed into law, revolutionise financial governance in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, I'd like to pay a tribute to Rodney Hyde, who has served in this Parliament and the people of New Zealand for 15 years. He is a formidable debater with a great political instinct and has an excellent knowledge of public policy. In winning Epsom in 2005, Rodney achieved one of the biggest political upsets in our generation, and he and his staff have continued to serve the people of Epsom unstintingly for the last 6 years. Over that time, it has become folklore that the National Party conceded that seat to ACT. Nothing could be further from the truth. ACT took that seat off the National Party, and I was proud to be one of over 200 volunteers who took part in that campaign. Rodney took David Garrett and myself, and later Hilary Calvert, under his wing when we first arrived in Parliament to teach us parliamentary process and the art of a good question. So that contribution continued right up until last week when Rodney argued strongly in caucus that the Video Surveillance Bill should be referred to a Select Committee, and the benefits of that wisdom were obvious from the debate in Parliament this afternoon. I also acknowledge my colleague Heather Roy, who has served in this Parliament for 9 years and who also played a vital role in ACT's 2005 Epsom victory. Heather's achievements have included her private members' bill opening up voluntary student union membership and the Aspire scholarships that she achieved as Associate Minister of Education. I also acknowledge my former colleague David Garrett, who was the driving force behind Act's 3 strikes legislation, which has made our streets safer from serious repeat violent offenders. I have told David many times since he left Parliament that there will be people alive in years to come who otherwise would have been murdered or seriously maimed but for his legislation. David Garrett has everything to be proud of. To Hilary Calvert, who came into Parliament at a difficult time and was thrown in the deep end, I thank you for your support and your wisdom, and in particular I acknowledge the time and effort that you put into listening to submissions on the Criminal Procedures Bill. To Sir Roger Douglas, I owe a great deal of gratitude. When Roger Douglas came knocking on my door early in 2008 asking me to stand for ACT, I rejected him. I wasn't prepared to pay the sacrifice or pay the personal cost of standing for Parliament. He subsequently convinced me to stand, Mr Speaker. I'm here today and I'm very proud that I made that decision. Sir, just under 2 weeks ago I announced that I would not be seeking re-election to Parliament on ACT's party list. I will, however, be standing in the electorate seat of Tamaki. However, my sole objective will be to campaign for the ACT party and party vote, and as a consequence this is likely to be my final speech to this House as a parliamentarian. From the first time I arrived, I have felt incredibly privileged to have been elected an MP, and as I say, I'm greatly indebted to Sir Roger Douglas for that, and I've been very lucky to have experienced all that I have. During my first 20 months, I served as a backbencher on Parliament's Finance and Electoral Select Committee and the Commerce Committee. I'm particularly proud that I was able to force the Commerce Committee inquiry into finance company collapses. The way that some of those who have lost money and have been treated by the legal system, given what would appear to be fraudulent actions on the part of some finance company directors, deeply concerns me. Just as Simon Power spoke yesterday of being deeply moved by his meeting with the Elliott family, I too have been moved in my meetings with some of those who have lost their homes and their savings. As a small consolation, it was great to assist in achieving the revised ANZ-ING settlement. I've also served on special select committees overseeing Auckland's governance, the Super City, the Emissions Trading Review and the Electoral Law. And I was pleased to be treated hospitably by Tau Hanari during my term as a member on Maori Affairs Select Committee reviewing the Marine and Coastal Bill. Sir, in April 2009, I was proud to travel with you as Speaker on the Speaker's tour of Vietnam and Japan and to meet with the President of Vietnam and the then Prime Minister of Japan. In August 2010, I was elected Deputy Leader of ACT and appointed Minister of Consumer Affairs and Associate Minister of Commerce. I thank the Prime Minister for his confidence in me and appointing me to those positions at that particular time. I was able to continue the work of the Honourable Heather Roy and the work that she did in reviewing consumer law, and the Consumer Law Reform Bill now sits on Parliament's audit paper. Sir, in May of this year, I was elected Parliamentary Leader of the ACT Party and resigned my portfolios to allow myself more time to concentrate on ACT's election campaign. Sir, like other members of this Parliament, I pay tribute to all of the staff who contribute to the smooth running of Parliament, Mr Speaker. And finally, to the present and past pupils, present and past staff of my former school, Otahu College, I say kia tamatani. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Rahui Katane.